What's up, everybody, and welcome to a brand new wrestling podcast, Taking the Pin, coming at you for the very first episode today with myself, Grimmy, this ugly mug that you're seeing right now, and then my glamorous assistant to my right or left, depending on your perspective, is Bragster. How are you doing, sir?
Oh, I'm good. I'm so glad to get this started. We've spoken about this for a while, and I mean, as the episode title entails, the start of this new era, the Netflix beginning for WWE is the perfect point to just jump straight in, and just enjoy wrestling and just talk about it and nerd out about it. It's great.
Absolutely. Nerding about wrestling is kind of the MO of this entire shindig that we've got going on here. So, again, I think there's only one place we need to really talk about this episode. There'll be lots of discussion about why we've got into wrestling and why we love wrestling so much in other episodes, but like you said, the start of a new era, the Netflix era, I think is the only thing we can discuss today. There's so much to talk about for a 3-hour show, which is crazy. So we'll get straight into it. And yeah, I'm happy to say that in terms of the grand scheme of things, overall the show ran pretty smoothly. I know there was some concerns from people who've watched previous Netflix live events that maybe this might not go so smoothly. There might be some bumps in the road, but it seemed pretty smooth, would you say?
I was incredibly impressed. I'd say about probably by the end of the Roman solo match was probably at the time where I went, I kind of just sat there and went, everything's went really smoothly. And in my head, I was like, don't say this out loud because it could go horribly wrong. But it felt like classic WWE being ramped up with the Netflix production that we all know and love. You know, the prime example of that was right at the start when they started showing the promo package, and they cut so seamlessly. It was beautiful between the package filling the screen and also then showing the crowd watching the video package on the big curtain that was filling the ring, and it was so perfectly done in the sense of you almost couldn't tell they were transitioning. Obviously they were, but as a viewer, you were just watching it and it felt so seamless. And I was like, this is what we hoped it would be. Like, I was like, if they keep this up for the entire night, the production is going to be flawless. And I kind of, to the most part, apart from a couple of Michael Cole's speaking when he wasn't supposed to, which is purely down to the fact that they've got to get used to the fact that in USA they are having adverts, and over in the UK and a lot of international markets they are not having adverts, so the commentators have to get used to that, you know, whereas in a place like AEW they've done that for a long time, based off of whatever platform they're on. They can sort of carry on during the ad breaks, whereas WWE haven't done that. So I feel like they've just got to get used to that, and to say that that's the only hiccup and that is purely human error says so much. So much about the night.
Absolutely. And like you were mentioning before about the sort of opening shots of the curtain and the arena and all that stuff, I think obviously we'll start at that point, and just the cold open with Triple H narrating over the top of it, the guy painting the canvas, and then obviously all the clips of Raw from yesteryear. So many great memories coming back as well. I mean, again, just a little sidebar for me, not being a pro wrestling fan for the past 30 years, and it's only really been the past 10 years, even seeing some of the more modern clips and stuff that I've maybe tuned into live or whatever was pretty cool in that sense. But then you've got all the flashbacks to like your Stone Colds, The Rocks, Bret Hart, and Hulk Hogan, who we'll get into in a little bit. But less said about that, the better. It was just a really cool opening, I think. I did see that they released it a little bit earlier, like before the show, but I didn't watch it because I wanted to see it live.
Me neither. I did the exact same thing. My friend, who I've gone to loads of wrestling shows with, sent it me and was like, "This is one of the best promo packages you're going to see WWE make.
Yeah.
Like, please go and watch it. And I just messaged back being like, I am not watching it until the show is live.
Yeah.
Because I wanted that feeling of, oh my God. And it just immediately captured me. Like, the fact that I didn't go and watch it beforehand meant that when I was watching it, I was like, I'm sold. I'm in. I'm ready for this show. Because I didn't know what to expect in that packet. And then I got goosebumps. I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it now. It's just so well done.
Yeah.
It's just WWE's promo package creating at its ultimate best.
Yeah.
And as we all know, Triple H is a very good script writer. He probably doesn't give enough credit for how good his script writing is and how good his voiceovers are when promoing events. And this was, again, him at his very best.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you mentioned Goosebumps there, and that's the thing I've got written down next to it on my notes. The 4 pages of notes I've written for this whole 3-hour show is Goosebumps for that cold open. I thought it was fantastic. And then, of course, the curtain drops, and whoever then Triple H himself is stood behind the curtain, waiting to do his introduction like he usually does. The "Are you ready?" And then the Netflix era begins, and then he went up in a ball of flames, and then the show got underway from there. And then there was a weird sort of 10-15 seconds of, well, what's going to happen now? Because, you know, it's either someone's coming out or there's a match starting or whatever. And then it was The Rock with his introduction and his updated, I guess, intro package, I guess, from when he came in last year. With obviously the sort of the Black Adam touches of the lightning and the sort of Hollywood rock music kicking in as well. And then Goosebumps in 4K as he's showing his arm and all that good stuff. And then it got to the bit where he started to talk, and it went a little bit south for me, personally. What did you think?
I honestly, we'll get on to what happens later on as well at the end of the Romans. I genuinely think The Rock forgot who he was. Like, we've just spent the last year hating on this man because he has been a dastardly heel and has made Cody bleed, has like hated upon everyone, has like pulled his weight, pulled his power, all of this, and then he turns up and he's like, "Oh, I'm Mr. Nice Guy again." He hands his People's Championship belt to his. I think there were
his daughters, yeah.
And hands the belt to them, which sort of was a bit weird because that entire thing was it was part of his heelish gimmick. So I was like, that's odd because that's a very babyface thing to do. While you've got Pat McAfee naturally going, the final boss is here. He's gonna hyping up that he's a dastardly heel, and then he cuts this extremely babyface promo that had no heelish tendencies in it. I thought they were going to go to the heelish tendencies when he mentioned Cody and Mama Rhodes, and instead again went really nice there. I agree with you. It's sort of like, if you are a casual fan or you are new and you know The Rock, it's perfect. But anyone that's watched the past year was confused as to what the hell was going on.
Yeah.
Like, it was really odd, and I feel like it wasn't necessary because you've already had Triple H come out and do the whole, this is the Netflix era, blah, blah. If they had The Rock come out first and it wasn't Triple H, I'd understand maybe the bit more corporate-y sort of side of the promo. But the fact that didn't happen and there was no storyline development, I was just confused. I'm sort of glad you're sort of on the same wavelength as me, because
I think for me it was, again, at the time I was just like, okay, this isn't what I expected. But then when I looked at sort of the bigger picture of it, and you think it's the first show on Netflix, all the corporate guys were in the front row, Netflix. Again, I wrote a note saying there should have been a drinking game of how many times Netflix was said on the show, because I think if you did, you'd probably have a very hungover crowd today. By the amount of times that got said, I should have done a counter for it. But I thought, because of obviously how corporate it all was, and it was the first big Netflix era episode, it kind of made sense that he would go back to sort of hi everyone, I'm here. Sort of, he's not saying anything important. He's telling everyone it's the largest gate of an arena show, which basically is telling everybody you paid a lot of money to be here. Thank you. Like that's essentially what he was doing.
Yeah.
And then obviously thanking Cody for carrying the company,
Mm.
acknowledging Roman as OTC, all that stuff happened, and then it was kind of like that was it really. And then he sort of
Yeah.
went off and did his thing, and then it was time for Roman and Solo. But again, I wrote down here a question which I think kind of again I'm a little bit 50-50 on, but I feel like because of this and because of later events in the show, my initial question after that was, are we actually getting Rocket Mania? Because there was a lot of reports in the past few days that he's basically going to be involved.
Mm.
But does that promo speech, whatever you want, that little bit of, whatever he did at the start of the show, does that make you think he's either going to be at Mania or not be at Mania, do you think?
It makes me think he's not.
Hmm.
And I partly hope that I am wrong, because sort of what I'm thinking is he's not going to be there this year. He's going to be there next year.
Mm-hmm.
That's what my brain is sort of telling me, purely because of the events at the end of the Roman Solo match, which we'll talk about in more detail. But obviously, the handing of the Ulafala, the you know the almost weird stare down without it being a stare down sort of situation, sort of said to me that this is not a progression.
Mm-hmm.
This is a we are waiting
Mm-hmm.
sort of moment. Which says to me that the Rock isn't going to be there this Mania, is going to be there next Mania, and that's when we're getting the Roman Rock match. I think that sort of handing of the Ulafala, everything like that, is purely there for promo package material. I think that is the only reason why that happened. It didn't need to happen. I think it's purely there for promo package material for the eventual Rock beatdown that we get, and the want for power.
Yeah.
I think that that's where it's going, but I hope I'm wrong. I hope it happens this year, because the older Rock gets, the worse that match is going to get.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's not going to happen in this year. It's going to happen next year. What do you think?
I'm a bit torn. I'm 50-50 because I think it's a great way to sort of throw people off the scent that he's going to be there, because if he then turns up at, say, a Raw before the Rumble, or does something before then and like attacks Roman or does something like that, then I think that's a great way to throw people off the scent a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
People will probably go, well, why did we have this in the first place? Like, why did he have to interact with Roman at all? Why didn't he just do the speech at the start, introduce the match, go away and never be seen? And then plus there was all the Instagram stuff in the background when he left the stage and he was having drinks with Cody and got in the truck and then told everybody he's going to NXT tonight. So we'll see him then, probably doing another thank you for being who you are speech and sort of thing. So yeah, it's a great way to sort of throw people off the scent if they're doing it, but I do lean towards, I think they're probably leaving it till next year, though it does make me question why he came out at the end of Bad Blood and did the whole like cutthroat sign thing, because when I saw that I was like, all right, that's what we're building to next for Roman, but it didn't. We haven't seen it yet.
The only thing, and I'm sort of putting it into the ethos, I've had this theory for a while, probably since this whole Punk has a favor, right? And I have had this theory for a while, and I feel like the fact that, as you say, that the whole throwing off the scent type thing could be part of that, because I've had this feeling that the favor for Punk is to get him the main event of WrestleMania. And there's only one way to get yourself the main event of WrestleMania, and that's to win the Royal Rumble. I know they changed it some years, but that's not the point. But I feel like, so therefore, in my head, I'm like, I say, okay, so if the favor is that, and that's what I think it's going to be, I've had this feeling for a while that it's going to end up with Roman and Punk at the end. There's reports that that's going to end up being a Mania match. I've got a feeling that is, you'll have them two as the final two, and you'll have Paul Heyman call the final boss, and the favor is then done because the final boss comes down, takes out Roman, Punk wins the Rumble. Something along those lines, whether it is that he's the final two or whatever, or however it works out. But I've still got this feeling that that's what's going to happen. And this has sort of thrown me off that scent, but I'm still sort of sticking to that could happen, and that because throwing us off the scent and then the favor happening would hurt a lot more and would be way more impactful than if he had, like, there was more of a stare down here and then it happened. It would be like, whereas, maybe throwing us off the scent and then it happened and makes it more shocking.
Yeah, fair. I think that's a reasonable theory. I mean, I have a few things that I think could happen, but I think that's probably for another podcast. And I don't want to give a million content things away in the space of 15 minutes, because it would be quite easy to do that, because again, I still have 3 or 4 pages to go through here of stuff I've written down. So probably Mania theories could be the next one. I think that's probably where we'll head to next for the next podcast. But yeah, again, I could see something like that happening where Heyman has to get rid of Roman in the middle of the Rumble and then it's Punk's to win, essentially. I can see that totally happening. I could also see Roman potentially picking up a belt between now and Mania, and then that's how we get to Punk and Roman. But that's just a teaser. That's just a little tease. Nothing more. And we'll leave it at that. So, speaking of Roman, and obviously getting into all that with The Rock and all that good stuff, we'll go into the tribal combat rules. I'll do a quick run through. Obviously, a lot happened in the match. First thing I wrote down was Reigns' entrance is still one of the coolest things to see in a wrestling arena. And especially when the crowd was sort of tightly packed into him and he was walking through. Oh, he's just, it was just so cool to see that. And yeah, just a whole, obviously the start of this new era and everything rolled into one with Roman. It was sort of, I started thinking about like what a turnaround it's been these past 5 years since his Shield days, going solo and then being suckering Succotash and all the famous lines that everyone throws at him, and the dog food incident, we'll call it, and all that stuff. And then obviously we get the start of the match. A couple of things I wrote down were the new monitor attacks don't quite seem to have the same heft as the old monitor attacks. Tiny tablet, big massive like TV screen box to smash off someone's head. Doesn't quite have the same ring to it. No. You then obviously had your chair shots, the low blow from Solo, surprise kendo from Solo, and then sort of the typical bloodline mayhem kicked in with Tama Tonga coming in and pulling the ref out, and it all kicked off from there, where basically cameo after cameo after cameo happened. Most surprising to me, KO appeared out of nowhere.
So off guard. Yeah. Like I at that point I was like, okay, they've had because I think the one thing on my notes is that like the near falls were unbelievable in this match. The one after the initial bloodline got involved, obviously it got me. And then when the OG bloodline got involved and took out Solo and Solo kicked out, that one really got me.
Yeah.
And then at that point I was like, okay, it's going to be a one-on-one match. And then KO comes in, stunner. And at that point, I truly believe that was it. I really thought, like, with this whole story of what Drew and KO are doing, of, we're taking out the blood people involved in the bloodline, people who respect the bloodline, and all of this after all of the years of terrorizing the company.
Yep. And
I really thought at that moment, I was like, that's that shocking of a moment. I was like, this is it. And obviously it wasn't. But I really, like, that got me out of my seat. I was like, oh my God, I did not see it coming at all.
Yeah. And then, of course, you had, like you mentioned before, the original bloodline were there, Sammy and Jimmy making the save, Jacob Fatu also being there. Again, I can't say enough praise for him and what he's potentially got in his future. Because, again, there's a storyline for him and Solo, I think, just right there waiting to happen. And Tama Tonga as well, I think, is someone that I think a lot of people are sort of underestimating that could be potentially, if there's a story of Solo doesn't want to lead that bloodline anymore, and then Tama Tonga could be the guy that steps up. I do think there is something there with that. And then, of course, KO, like I mentioned before, Cody comes in with the save and gets rid of KO. The usual bloodline madness at the end of the match, like I said, and then 2 spears and Rollins back to being the tribal chief.
One thing of note was actually the ring announcing of obviously the entire time since he's come back, he's the original tribal chief, and then after this match happened, the only tribal chief. I was like, that is so good. It's such a minor detail, but it's so good.
Yep. And it was. I felt like the match was a great way to start. I think the one, it's not really criticism, but the one thing I worry about sometimes with the bloodline stuff is it becomes a bit too formulaic, and you kind of know where it's gonna go at times. I think having stuff like you said, like we said before, with KO coming in, being a bit of a surprise and like, oh, we didn't expect to see him here, and sort of bit weird that Cody was in the front row for The Rock and then went back and then came out to his music and then, but whatever. I'm not here to pick at little things like that. I honestly couldn't care about those things really. My main concern is if the match is good or not, and in my opinion, it was a good start to the match. Good start tonight, sorry. So Roman gets the Ula Fala from The Rock. He puts it on him, stands in the corner. Roman puts up the ones, gets his big moment on Netflix, and then that's it. 1 hour down. First hour.
Whew.
2 to go. I haven't written down when the second hour ended, so we're just going to have to guess. So then we cut to the next bit, which is essentially the New Day are getting their little interview segment. And again, at the minute, probably one of my favourite things to watch is them just getting endlessly booed and them then ripping the crowd for being wrong.
Yeah.
And all that stuff. Is it probably very easy to say they're probably up there, if not the most hated act in WWE at the minute?
I think yeah, especially given the fact that Dominic has started to get a little bit of love from the crowd. I think they probably are the most hated ones. But again, like, what WWE is very, very good at the moment is creating heels that are correct.
Yeah.
Like, like with Drew and with KO, they are right. Why are people suddenly cheering the bloodline? They've done nothing but horrible things for years.
Yeah.
And then you've got in this scenario, the New Day are right.
Yeah.
They didn't attack Big E. They didn't do anything that horrible. They just kind of kicked him out of the group. Yeah. Which is, as they sort of said, we could have done what most tag teams do, and that's beat them up. But we didn't. We have too much. And it's like, they are right, but also we hate them for doing it.
Yeah.
And it's a perfect thing because the best heels are the ones that actually have a point.
Yeah.
Because they are the ones that, despite everything, you can still root behind the heel a little bit and still understand their motivations. And it's just spot on. The weird part with it is, like a few things in this night, things that were advertised to happen didn't happen. And the New Day Wrestling is one of them, because Ray was supposed to have a mystery partner, which we all know who that's supposed to be, because there's a mystery opponent for Chad Gable next week.
Who's a luchador by chance?
Crazy. Who's going to be this luchador? So, like, obviously the debut of Penta was supposed to happen on this show. They've decided not to do it, and that's why they've had the New Day say their piece, and you don't deserve to see us wrestle. That's not the first case of things changing on this card that was supposed to happen. But I think they did a really good job of really showing that the New Day are horrible. And for any casual fans especially who may have fell out of love 5, 6, 7 years ago will obviously know that the New Day are beloved. So what's happened? And they explained it in a very good way. I think they are generating natural heat. And fingers crossed we see Big E, man.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. So yeah, one thing I did notice is they sort of had to cut away from that bit early because then they went to the Penta reveal with the
Yes.
full logo, which was
And
pretty cool.
the smile being Penta is just ah.
Yeah, it
I,
was.
I worry that they're going to change his look too much, and I really hope they don't.
I don't
Uh,
think they will, to be honest.
and also that first Zero Miedo is going to
Yeah,
hit so hard.
yeah.
It's oh
I think it's gonna be. I think we're very much out of the era now where when wrestlers come in, they they have to have the WWE
mhm.
workover.
Yeah,
I don't think we're in that as much anymore. I mean, certainly there'll still be the odd one that has maybe something new to them, but I think with
yeah.
Penta, you know what you're getting with him. You know his look. Everybody, for the most part, will recognize him if you're a fan of
Mhm.
wrestling. So, like, why change something? And he's so distinctive to
Yeah.
look at in terms of his overall look. You
So
don't forget what he looks
marketable.
like once you see him.
Yeah, he's so marketable as well.
Yeah.
Like WWE have been looking for years for
hmm
someone to replace Rey Mysterio with the masks,
hmm
and you've got an amazing mask on Penta's face that is so marketable. And
hmm
I truly believe that AEW sort of missed a mark not marketing it more than they
Absolutely.
did,
hmm
because like having that mask on people's faces, like the one that he takes off, sort of
Yeah.
thing, the hooded one,
hmm
like you could see that on kids' faces across the world really easily because it's so distinctive, as you said.
Yeah.
It's such a good look.
hmm
It's so cool. He's so cool. I think that if they play things right, that this he Penta's going to become a huge star
Yeah.
really quickly.
Absolutely. And I look forward to the Penta Dominic Mysterio match. So cut from the reveal to Penta, and then cut to the next advert, which again is sort of been a big news story in the past 24 hours or so. It was rumored that 2026 Royal Rumble was going to Saudi Arabia. That got confirmed. Um, yeah, thoughts on that? Because again, I'm kind of like people are like, oh, why does it have to go to Saudi Arabia? It's like, well, the relationship has built year on year on year.
No.
I felt like we were going to get a big pay per view at some point. I'm glad it's not Mania, and I'm glad it's something else. I wish it was either SummerSlam or Survivor Series, but beggars can't be choosers.
Mhm.
So, what do you think on the Rumble going to Saudi in 2026?
I personally think if you'd asked me a couple of years ago, I would have said this is the worst decision ever.
Yeah.
However, um, to my own annoyance, the Saudi crowd have been really good over the last year or so.
Yeah.
They've actually made those shows feel special. They know who the wrestlers are.
Yeah.
And like previous years, they're not asking for dead people to return from the dead to
Oh,
wrestle,
Jesus. Right. Yeah.
which they've done in previous years.
Yeah.
They know the product. They cheer and boo exactly how they're supposed to. They are really loud
Yeah.
for specific moments. And do you know what? I can see it going down well. I can see it. I personally obviously don't like it with the whole Saudi Arabia stuff, but that's the whole different debacle.
hmm
In terms of a venue, I know for a fact they're going to be loud. And
Yeah.
for a Rumble, that's what you need. You
Yeah.
need them to be loud. You need them to, cheer as loudly as they possibly can.
hmm
And I know they can do that. Obviously, natural disappointment because the rumors they could have come to the UK, but obviously it's not. So natural disappointment there, but I do think they are gonna do well with it.
Yeah. And
I mean,
I think from a WWE perspective, it's kind of an easy win because you know the shows do well over there. You know the crowd's going to give you a reaction. They obviously have this relationship, for better or worse, they have that relationship with Saudi Arabia. So it's kind of like it may be a bit of a testing ground for the bigger pay per views to go international. Because I know obviously we've had Money in the Bank in the UK.
Mhm.
We've had, I think it was Backlash in France this year, or past year. And other, obviously, Clash in the Castle in Scotland and Wales or wherever you want to put them. But it might be a testing ground. This might be sort of the door opening to the bigger ones going abroad.
Yeah.
So dare I say it, Mania in London. Just saying. Just saying. Just put manifesting that in my dreams.
Yes.
But again, obviously, like we've said before, with obviously Saudi Arabia as a country and how things are over there, it's not great to see. But it kind of felt inevitable that this was going to happen at some point. It's just, I'm glad it's not Mania. Is basically my feeling on it, because that would have been a bit of a bad taste in the mouth, I think, especially when you're starting this Netflix era off as they are. To then have that in the middle of it would have probably not gone with what they were going for, I think.
Yeah, I think they were obviously wanted to take it outside America, wanted to give it to a trusted market, and obviously at that point you're looking at like UK or Saudi or even Canada as well, which they have been to on multiple occasions. Obviously going for the Elimination Chamber this year. I think it was inevitable it would probably go to one of them. It just happens to be Saudi, and also they're contracted to go to Saudi so many times a year. It checks one of those off. If immediately, if they have to go twice a year, you've checked one off in January. Congratulations.
Yeah.
So it's one of, as you said, it was inevitable. This is just the first time it's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. So, with that being said, we'll move on from that one, and then to one of my favorite parts of the show, and that was John Cena appearing on the in the ring. Weirdly, saying this out loud, that it's the start of the retirement tour. The farewell tour has now officially begun. The clock is now on and is ticking down to Cena's time being over. As the towel said, and as his T-shirt said, the last time is now. And we'll probably see that on the rainbow of coloured T-shirts that he will wear across the year and in many places. And all I will say to the roster is if he gets that military haircut, you're doomed. That's all I'm saying. He starts talking about, obviously, he starts rallying up the crowd, rallying the crowd up, like he usually does with his promos when he appears in one-off appearances, like he did at Money in the Bank and things like that. And then he's talking about, what's next? What's going to happen next for Cena? He says, the internet's been talking, reels off a bunch of names. You had Drew in there, Punk, Cody, a bunch of other people as well. And then he goes, and I know there's been talk of me going for the 17 times record. All I'm going to say is it's never going to happen because, quite frankly, past my best, I haven't won in over 2,000 days. Which, again, when I heard that, I was like, I didn't realize how long it had actually been. Yeah. 2,000 days since he's won a wrestling match is just crazy. And then he goes, but the thing is about WWE, and the thing is about my career, you can never really say never. And there's always a few ways you can get yourself into the picture without having to win 10 matches in a row or whatever.
It would take a miracle.
It would take a miracle. I could win Money in the Bank. I could win Elimination Chamber. Or I could win the Royal Rumble. And then all the crowd's going, oh my God, Royal Rumble. And inside, and again, I'm not necessarily, I wouldn't even call myself as the biggest Cena fan, but hearing him say that, I was like, oh my God, Cena's going to win the Royal Rumble. This is farewell tour. What a way to start. And then officially puts himself in the Royal Rumble by saying, well, if you don't buy a ticket, you'd never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So my question to you, Bragster.
Yeah.
Can John Cena win the Royal Rumble?
Can he? Yes. Will he? No. I adored this promo. I thought that I was really interested to see what he said when he came out, and the doubt on his face, you really felt the fact that he hadn't won in a while and he was struggling, but then you felt the energy come from the crowd and his sort of belief come back. And it was just so well told. It just shows that Cena is one of the best storytellers in professional wrestling ever. Possibly the best storyteller in professional wrestling. He is incredible at what he does. He as you said, makes everyone believe that he was going to win the Rumble. He is odds-on favorite to win the Royal Rumble. He everyone was like, he's going to win it, and then he does this, and then you're like, yeah, he's going to win it. I don't think he will. I think it's a little too obvious. I think that what's a more compelling storyline, similar to when Shawn Michaels wanted The Undertaker and was doing everything in his power, was just to fail and to fail and to fail. And I think that Cena failing at the Rumble just will start that. Now, I'm not saying he has to fail at every turn, but I feel like Cena coming back, then just immediately winning the Rumble, it almost ignores as he said, the 2,000 odd days of not winning a match. I feel like they risk just almost like ignoring that and pretending that didn't happen when they could actually utilize that really well in the story and go on. And personally, I think if he is going to be in a world title match at Mania, it's going to come through the chamber. I also think that part of the reason why I don't think he's going to win the Royal Rumble is, are you going to pass up the opportunity of Cena being in the chamber one last time? I don't think you do. I feel like, I feel like Cena this year will be in the Royal Rumble, he will be in the chamber, and he will be in Money in the Bank. I feel like he is going to do everything, and if he wins the Rumble, he can't be in the chamber. So for me, that's the main sort of reason why I just think it's just not going to happen. I don't know what you think.
Before that promo, I would have said no chance in hell. After that promo, I've become something of a believer. But I do think there is something to him winning the Rumble almost stops him being in Elimination Chamber, because why would he need to be there? Yeah. That's not to say he can't not be in the Elimination Chamber, because again, it's his last year. Does he need to do that when he's probably going to do everything else under the sun? Who knows? But I do think there is something to how he put, like you were saying, he's a great storyteller, and he paints the picture so well. The way he changed the narrative in that promo for being everyone's assuming he's going to get number 17. He's painting it as he has a climb to get there if he's going to get it. Like, he can't just Cena his way into the title picture and just be like, I'm John Cena. Give me a title picture card now, please. Give me a title fight. I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think there is going to be this build. Now, you see, me fantasy booking, I sort of was like, he almost gets the Rumble. He almost gets the Chamber. He has his Mania match, wins that, probably. Does whatever. Or loses it, whoever it is. He gets Money in the Bank. And he does the John Cena thing of, I'm not going to just cash it in at any given moment. I'm telling everybody, I'm cashing it in, main event SummerSlam. Now, my booking was Randy Orton, and you have Cena Orton for the final time for the title, and that's how Cena gets number 17. Because, again, how many historic title matches have they had? And it would be the final time ever. Would be huge for SummerSlam. But that being said, going back to the original question, I think he can win the Rumble, but I don't think he will. I think it's going to be, like you say, the Shawn Michaels against Taker. He's almost there, but he doesn't quite get it.
Final four, final five. To be like, I could see maybe his Mania opponent or something eliminating him. I can even see a Logan Paul eliminating him because of the heat that will develop. I think that whoever eliminates Cena is going to get booed out the building. Put it on someone you want to get booed out the building. Like a Logan Paul would be brilliant. I think Dominic Mysterio could also be a really good shout for that.
I think again, this is probably my bias against Logan Paul kicking in here, but like, if you're going to give Cena a Mania match and it being his final Mania match, if it's me personally, I want to give it to someone who you can trust to get a good match out of Cena, because again, he hasn't wrestled that much. When we've seen him wrestle, I think the last time I remember him wrestling was against Austin Theory at 39. I think that's the last match I can. Oh, he did wrestle solo. Sorry, yeah. So the last one I can remember seeing was the Austin Theory match, and he didn't look great there. And I'm just thinking, like, Logan Paul, yes, great athlete, can do everything you need him to do. Is he the one to go in and carry a match with John Cena?
Yeah,
probably not.
Yeah.
If it's me, again, going into sort of the, obviously you're going to put him against the heel, someone who's going to eliminate him in the Rumble. If you're going with sort of a trusted partner, I would maybe go the Drew route or KO,
Yeah.
or again, depending on how things go storyline wise, I would maybe say Seth.
Yep.
I think because again, you want Cena's last Mania match
To be good.
To be good enough to potentially steal the night, or whichever night he's on. You want it to be good enough to steal, and I don't know if Logan's.
Yeah.
I mean, he could probably get there at some point, but I
Yeah.
don't think he's there now. And I just think you want someone who's not a good hand. That's kind of a bit derogatory to say something like that, but you want someone who's trusted and can carry that on their own. And those three as a dance partner for Cena, I think, would be fantastic.
I think for his last Mania match, I think you, as you said, you either go all guns blazing, let's make this one of the best Cena matches ever, or you create a moment, and that's either he wins his 17th or he wins the Intercontinental title and wins the Grand Slam.
Yeah.
I think those are your three options. You either give him the best match you possibly can, or you have him break a record or become a Grand Slam champion. Those are your options.
Absolutely. So keep it peeled on your eyes on WWE for whatever happens next in the Cena farewell tour. So next up we had Liv and Rhea. My first note was Dom is the perfect psychic heel. That was my first note on this match because again he's just the smarmiest, potentially biggest mustached and mullet-headed person I've ever seen. Again, I thought match was good. I didn't necessarily have any sort of like, oh my god, this is amazing. I thought there were certain bits, like when Rhea caught Liv, when Liv was about to hit the move, and she's like, not this time, kid. Slams her back down and obviously gets the win. And there's obviously all the history of Liv and Rhea, which is, again, I think most of the matches of the night had a bit of history to them going into it, so there was a bit of story. And obviously Rhea got the win, and for me that was kind of I was a bit 50-50 about whether or not Rhea should win it, because again she's probably, I would say she is the best female character wrestler you've got in the roster. So I understand going into Mania, you probably want her in one of the big title matches. I understand that. But I also think this past year, Liv has stepped up remarkably. Ever since she took out Rhea, got the belt, went through into the Judgment Day, did all that stuff. I think Liv went to another level. And I just think that you could have taken Liv up to that Rhea level by having her in a big title match at Mania. But again, I get why Rhea won the belt. I'm not saying that Rhea shouldn't have won it or anything like that. My question, I guess, for both of them now is like, what's next after this? Because
it's so tough, because I think the bigger question is, especially with Liv, because I think the ending of this match being, Rhea's got the title back, so she's taken out Liv. Then you've got the fact that she beat up Dominic Mysterio, which we've all been waiting for. So that's now in the back picture. So Rhea's got a clean slate now going into Mania. That's more useful for Rhea than it is for Liv, because Liv is sort of in this weird limbo position of what happens. And my biggest frustration with Liv's run has always been that it's been more about Dominic than it has been about her. And I feel like that's cost her a little bit, because going into her matches, I'm not as excited because I just know it's going to be about Dominic. And as much as I love Dominic, I think it's sort of taken a bit of the shine and the moment that Liv should have had over the last 6 months. Because as you said, she's been doing brilliant work, but it's sort of been a little bit overshadowed, just a tiny bit. So I really don't know what they're going to do there. I think the obvious one is Liv and Raquel are going to go into the tag division. That is exactly what's going to happen. They don't know what to do with either of them, so they're a team. So let's make them a team and make them win the titles probably at Mania. That's what I see happening, which is a shame, but it gives them something to do. With Rhea, I think it's interesting because the rumors were that Becky Lynch was going to be there, and she wasn't. like a lot of people, I think there's a chance that she could appear after the Intercontinental title match next week. And maybe you go into Becky trying to win one of the mid-card bouts, possibly against Lyra Valkyria, who she has history with.
Yeah.
Then the rumors are that maybe Rhea and Io face each other, but obviously, if that's going to happen, the likelihood is Io's probably got to get through the Chamber or the Rumble to get there. So it's kind of a bit like, okay, like where are we going with here? I think that there's sort of this weird limbo bit where I don't know what they're going to do up until the Rumble. Well, to be honest, I don't know who she's going to defend that title against up until Mania.
Yeah,
probably until Io is the opponent, is my personal opinion. But even if it's Becky, I just don't think that it's going to be a series of matches. Whoever she faces at Mania will be for the first time since she's won that title.
Yeah.
So I don't know who's going to be there, and that's the issue that they've got, is the top of that women's division on Raw currently has no clear direction, which could be good, but it could also backfire.
Yeah, true. One thing on Liv, I do wonder with Dominic trying to hug Rhea and like sort of go, "Yay, come on, let's kiss and make up here," and then obviously Rhea destroyed him. I do wonder if this leads to sort of what everyone had sort of theorized early on Judgment Day, Liv joining, was that her and Finn team up sort of thing, and then they become the power couple. And then Finn goes, because again, there's rumors that Finn's going to get a big solo push, single push this year. I wonder if that's sort of what it's building to. So that was kind of me theorizing on that a little bit. But
no, I could definitely see Dominic being kicked out of the Judgment Day.
Yeah.
I think that a really good way of doing that, as sort of hinted at by him meeting with Nick Aldis, is he moves brands that actually the Judgment Day secretly cause that to happen. Manufacture that to happen, so he's no longer a distraction, as he's been a distraction or whatever. And that's how you get him to separate without the big beatdown or classic removal. And then Dominic's there to do his own thing over on SmackDown with the US title, which I think is more better suited to him anyway. And you start having that pursuit over there. I agree. I think that's where it's probably going.
Yeah, fair enough. So Rhea wins the belt, celebrates, comes out, dong. Undertaker's badass theme hits then, and he comes out on his motorbike, goes around the ring, goes back down, has a conversation with Rhea, strike the pose, they walk off. Didn't necessarily mind it. Was a bit like, I mean, I think to be fair, the waiting between him coming out and Rhea just stood there with the belt, Rhea did really well. Just like, I'm just gonna shine it for him. I thought that was quite, a nice little thing she did there, just try and fill the awkwardness of the camera just staring at her and nothing happening. But yeah, so Undertaker comes out and leaves is essentially my note on that, and not really much else to say. No. And then we cut to Gable talking to Adam Pearce, saying that he's got this 2025 bucket list. He's going to win a singles title. He's going to do this. He's going to do that. And then he's going to... It was something... I think he said something along the lines of, I'm going to kick this notion that I can't fight against luchadors. So next week, I want a luchador. I want the best you can give me. And Pearce is like, I've got an idea. And then walks away. And it's kind of like... I was a bit like, when I saw that, I was like, why did you do the Penta reveal like an hour beforehand? Why not do so? You could either put the Penta reveal just after that to be like, yeah, we know who's coming, basically, or you just don't show it, and it's kind of like, who's the luchador going to be? Is it Rey Mysterio? Is it that? Because for the new fans, you don't really, you're probably not going to know.
Yeah.
And you're probably thinking, oh, it's probably Rey Mysterio or someone like that.
Yeah.
But again, that's me picking at hairs. Not the biggest thing in the world. But Gable versus Penta next week should be fun.
Can't wait. So excited.
We then cut to The Miz getting interviewed, and he's saying, "Yay, Cena's back," doing his over the top Miz hype thing. Then Karrion Kross turns up and he's like, "You know, you're still fighting the Wyatt Six with us, don't you?" And he's like, "No, I'm not." And he's like, "But didn't you? But you beat John Cena in the main event of WrestleMania, didn't you?" He's, "Yes." And it's like, and then he's asked him a bunch of questions. He's like, "So you're gonna help us fight the Wyatt Six, aren't you?" "Yes." "Oh."
Oh.
And it's like, "See you later, pal," and walks off. I thought that was quite a funny little bit. And to be fair, sorry, go on.
No, I think that this was a really good segment. Just again, sort of the Miz being the Miz, and then I sort of tweeted it at the time, but that for me, Karrion Kross gets this character. This is the best character work I've seen from Karrion Kross. He gets it. He knows who he is. A little bit that comedic side, while also being dark and, you know, I'm gonna beat the living hell out of you. You know, he gets this, and I'm calling it early. This is a big year for Kross.
Right.
I think this is a big year for Kross. I think he wins the singles title this year. That is my big. I really think that his work recently has been good, and just that work in that promo, the comedy element of it, just shows the range that Karrion Kross has.
Yeah.
And then when you end up with the eventual Wyatt Six match and you see that he is a badass, I think to the casual fans, people be like, "Oh, I think he's someone that's going to stand out to new viewers. He's a man that's going to stand out," and he did on this night, which was packed, and he stood out.
Yeah, definitely. I think you should say that about the singles title. Like, I could definitely see him having some sort of intercontinental run or something like that when eventually the time comes when Braun passes it on to someone, or, you know, decides to go for a world title or whatever, whenever that happens, because again, he's getting the rocket strapped to him.
Yeah.
Boy, oh boy, is he. So then from there, we got The Rock basically announcing he's going to be on NXT whilst driving in his van and driving away. Okay, fair enough. We'll see you on NXT. And then Travis Scott appeared, standing in the middle of the crowd, looking like he didn't know where he was, which was quite funny. And then he was smoking some sort of foreign cabbage, I believe is the term.
What was used.
Foreign cabbage. And then he started eating with Jey Uso, who suddenly appeared next to him. And then they made their way down. And again, I think they were expecting Travis Scott to eat and do more with Jey. He just kind of stood there and shouted at everybody and was there.
Yeah.
And then the moment of the night for me, Michael Cole getting up on the desk with Pat and eating.
So good.
You never
so good. And I also saw on Twitter Michael Cole's watch. Pat McAfee tweeted it. Michael Cole's watch asked him, like, "It looks like you've taken a really bad fall. Has this cool?" And it said like "cool," like emergency services, or "I'm okay."
Yeah.
After so that just shows how much they got into it. I think that you know, I think this entrance. Someone actually tweeted it, and I didn't think about it until they did. If you are a new fan tuning in to Netflix, congratulations, you've just seen the biggest star in WWE. That is exactly what you are thinking. The moment you've seen that entrance with Travis Scott next to Jey Uso has the entire crowd going mental, the commentators going mental. You watch that and you go, he is the biggest star in this company. That is what you think as a casual viewer watching that. Like, and you know, obviously as long-term fans, we know that it's been this really long journey, but as a casual fan, as someone who's tuning into Netflix because it's on Netflix now and tuning in for the first time in either years or ever, you are watching that going, Jey Uso is the biggest star in this company.
Fair enough.
So I think that, you know, they've really, really got to push that man.
Yeah.
Like, I know he's won a singles title, but I genuinely think they can't afford almost to have the Usos back together because it's going to derail what the hell they've got with Jey Uso right now, which is an absolute star.
Yeah, my thing with Jey is I still think there's a little bit of the memory of Mania last year with the fight with Jimmy. That not being the not no one goes in expecting a 5-star classic, but that being sort of a bit of a dud in comparison to the rest of the weekend, which was so strong top to bottom. That was kind of the sore thumb that stood out really of all the matches. And I do think sometimes there is a little bit of he's not had that sort of big marquee match to sort of avert attention away from that. And I do wonder if maybe Mania is where he gets that with somebody. I don't know who the name would be. But again, I think obviously there is a bit of a hesitancy in my brain with Jey as to, is he going to be one of the guys in the future? Yeah. But like you say, him coming out last night the way he did with Travis Scott yeeting on the desk with Pat, Travis, and then Michael, it was kind of like they clearly still believe in him and they clearly still see something in him, because if they didn't, he wouldn't be getting this massive entrance to it. And yeah, people can make the argument, it's Netflix, they're making a big deal out of everybody, but he's one of the 8 people that wrestled on that card. You don't get that profile of opening night on Netflix without them having some faith in you. So I think the next year is very big for Jey, and he's gonna, and I think even if he has a couple of like sort of main event matches or big level title matches, as long as he pulls out what we know he can, then I do think, like you say, he'll be one of the biggest ones in the company by far. Especially when Roman's not there, when he's doing his part-time schedule, Jey's going to be one of you guys you turn to, really. So in terms of the match itself, again, like the others, I quite enjoyed this. I quite enjoyed the pace of the match as well, because I did feel like the others did sort of stop-start a little bit. I did feel like the pace was there throughout the entirety of the match. Of course, Jey won with the roll-up, which was surprising. But also then when Drew's like talking to him, he's like, get up, come on, like I'm ready for it now. Like this, like he's confident, and he's so sure he's gonna win it, and then he mucks it up, which has basically been Drew's storyline for the past year. That he's had everything just there, but he can't get out of his own way and just finish the job. So he's once again screwed himself, which again, I was thinking to myself, if Drew wins this, where does he go next? And I think him losing this sort of builds on this maniacal sort of self-righteousness, but again, like we've said before earlier in the show, the best heels are the ones that are right. And Drew, in everything he's said up until this point, I have looked at that man and gone, he's not wrong. Like he is right. So I do think that this will lead to bigger things, and I think there was a bit of a tease of it on Friday on SmackDown with his interaction with Cody of I'm not here to hurt you, I'm just saying watch your back. And I do think that after Royal Rumble's done, Drew may be one of those guys that is lined up for Cody. So so what did you think of the match as a whole, and what do you think's next for Drew, maybe?
I kind of hinted to you before we started recording that my match of the night was going to be very different to everyone else's. This is my match of the night.
Okay.
This is exactly what I love about wrestling. The storytelling in this match was phenomenal. This is exactly what I like about how you can have a match be impactful despite not being the end of a story. And they told it so well the entire time on commentary. Jey Uso's never beaten Drew McIntyre one-on-one. Drew McIntyre's been on a roll recently, been rolling through people, rolled through Sammy. On to Jey he goes. He's trying to get through all of the Bloodline members, trying to prove that he's better than them all. And then you have Jey obviously collapse to the ground. He's getting battered in this match. And then there's the moment he collapses to the ground, Drew tries to pick him up, and then he's like, get up, I'm ready. And then you can tell that Jey's playing possum, and it's just perfect. Roll up, nice ending, and you could just see the anger on Drew's face. As you said, it's just going to really just make Drew just angrier and angrier as time goes on. And again, gives Jey Uso a huge win on Netflix premiere. You know, as you said, that their belief in Jey clearly hasn't gone. And this again proves it. That Sammy lost, but Jey won. You know, they clearly think that Jey's obviously a star, but like could be even more of one. What's next for Drew? I really don't know. I think this is the classic road to the Royal Rumble. They are if you're watching the show, they are slowly manipulating all of these stories to just sort of make it to the Rumble. And so you've got the fact that Drew is gonna be involved in the Rumble and probably gonna have collisions with the OG bloodline sort of within there, you know. And then you've got the OG bloodline and the new bloodline are also going to be in there, and they're going to tangle. It just everything's just tangling up. And then they're going to obviously try and set up a few of their other matches to go on the card, which will probably only be 2 or 3 other matches. Interesting that the Cody Owens match is happening on Saturday night's main event. That's obviously quite interesting because I thought that would have been a really good match to have at the Rumble. But unless I've got that wrong and it is happening at the Rumble, to which then I take all that back and that's the right decision. But
it's Royal Rumble, yeah.
Oh, it's Royal Rumble, perfect. Right, there we go. I'm an idiot. But at that point, by doing that, you don't necessarily have to have Gunther on that show defending his title, which leaves all of the people on Raw up and available to be in that Royal Rumble match. And like as free reign, I think you possibly could end up with a surprise Randy Orton appearance at some point at that Royal Rumble show as well. Whether that's in the Rumble or whether that's after the ladder match, I don't know. But I think that all of these storylines are sort of coming together really well. I think Drew is going to be in that Rumble match, and you're sort of maybe going to get a bit more of where that's sort of going. But I agree that comment to Cody of better watch your back is interesting. I don't know what that means, and I like the fact I don't know what that means. Because everything that Drew does matters. Everything he says matters. So you know it's going to pay off at some point. But this match was my match of the night. All the storytelling, the fast-pacedness of it, phenomenal.
Yep, absolutely. And I'm sure there'll be lots to talk about with Drew McIntyre in the weeks and months to come, as well as Jey, to be fair. And then we cut to a little teaser that came next with Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman. Paul talking about, we need to put you on a bigger stage. We need to put you to the entire world. Like, how can we do it? What date would you like it to be, my tribal chief? Roman goes, January 27th, and then shuts the door. WWE 2K25, baby. I was wondering when the tease was coming, and we got it today. And again, I think it's been somewhat leaked that basically what the cover looks like with Roman on it, because I think they put like wish list it now, and when you clicked on the Steam one, you basically go on Steam and there's the cover right there for them to see, following a similar sort of style to what they had with Cody. Be interested to see what the like sort of Ultimate Edition or Legendary Edition looks like and who's part of that, whether it's Roman with the belts or something a bit different. Final boss maybe, yeah, that's true. That could be it. Or just the bloodline in the entirety or whatever. There's a few things they could go with. So yeah, very much looking forward to that, and I'm sure we'll talk about that game in the previews of that at some point because we are players of that, which will be great. And then the funniest part of the night happened. So the real American Hulkster came out to his adoring fans, brother. And because, of course, you know, couldn't have some sort of mega event of WWE without Hulk Hogan showing up. And so I've got Hogan came out because, of course, he did. Full stop. Did he get booed? Because within the first 5 seconds, I was like, what's that noise? I was like, is that the crowd just making some noise that he's here? It's like, oh, yeah, he's here. Great. And then I was like, no, that man is getting booed out this building. Proceeds then to say, my greatest tag team partner I've ever had is you guys. You're my real tag team partners. Booed out the building. So then goes, I'm just going to promote a beer and get out of here then, I guess. And then just left to a chorus of boos.
Yeah. It was so funny to see. I mean, I say funny to see. I had to rewatch this on my phone after the show for the main reason of his music hit, and I went, piss break time, and walked out of the room, filled up my drink, went to the toilet. All of this, obviously, not in that order.
I was going to say you didn't fill your drink up with. Right. Okay. Yeah.
No,
Sure.
But like, it says a lot, and it's such a shame that such a legend of the business is genuinely. My first reaction was, right, let's go to the toilet. Like, I'm not staying for this. Obviously, knowing that I was doing the podcast, I watched it afterwards, and it was hilarious to see him just get absolutely booed out the butt. Like, because I walked in about halfway through the promo, and I was there like, who's on the screen? Because someone's getting booed. Turned around and it was like, no, Hulk Hogan's still here. Okay. And the thing is like, you can say what you want, whether it's about politics or whatever. The Undertaker got cheered. Hulk Hogan got booed. That says everything you need to know. It's got nothing to do with politics. People just don't like Hulk Hogan. You know, it's a bit of both. Like, don't get me wrong. Yeah. But like, the fact that, you know, it's not so clear cut as what some people on Twitter are making out, that it's purely a political thing. It's not just purely a political thing.
I think it's the political stuff recently. Again, you could argue Taker didn't get any of the backlash or whatever. Yep, that's a fair comment. But also, you've got 10 plus years ago the comments he came out with. Obviously, the leaks that came out from his court case.
Yeah.
Everything he's basically said or done then is somehow rubbed people up the wrong way or annoyed a certain crowd of people. And again, for me, I just don't know. I get he's such a big figure in wrestling. And again, I'm not a 30-year-old fan who's watched wrestling from the very beginning and is like, oh, Hulk Hogan's still a god to me.
Yeah.
But do we need him to be there all the time now? Could that have been could you have put, say if you didn't start with Rock at the start of the show, could that have been Rock coming out?
Yeah.
Could that have been a Stone Cold? Or, I don't know. Just any other legend you could have possibly thought of.
There's
Bret Hart.
Could have had so many legends that are in their locker that they could have had. You know, rumors are that Shawn Michaels was there. You know, obviously X-Pac was there and stuff. You could have had like a mini DXy type thing.
Yeah.
If you really wanted to. There were so many different things they could have done. Obviously they went with Hulk Hogan. That's fine. But hopefully that reaction just shows the crowd don't want to see Hulk Hogan anymore.
Yeah, that's what I've written down is basically, can we just leave him alone and never see him again? Because like, that's the thing is, you could have had, say for, again, I haven't marked the show as a 10 out of 10. But if it was a 10 out of 10 up until that point, and then you have those like 5-10 minutes of just basically awkward booing, and basically him trying to cut this promo of being like, you guys are tag team partners, and then I've got this deal with the beer being on the mats and this, that, and the other, and it's like, this is totally unnecessary. And I get there's still a part of the wrestling crowd that's like, Hulk Hogan's amazing, and I would like to sit down and have a conversation with those people at some point, but I just think I think we've reached a point now, and we probably reached the point, it should have been the point 10 years ago when everything happened with him, but when the crowd is booing him as much as they are at this point, just leave him at home. Just have him backstage if you need to, and just have him like wave at a camera if that's
have him do the promo packages like he did for Saturday night's main event, which I know from reports that was also booed in the arena. But the difference is it's a promo package, so the people at home don't see that.
You don't need to have the crowd plugged into that.
No, you don't have. Exactly. Yeah. So the reactions to Hulk Hogan are completely separate. You can have him in a promo package or whatever, and if you still want to use him, especially for something like Saturday Night's main event, which I completely understand because he was a big part of that in its original inception. So I completely agree that maybe, if you want to use him, that's where you use him, but do not put him in front of that crowd, because that right there last night was well, not last night, that shows when we're recording, on Monday night, where it just shows that, quite frankly, he is not needed. The crowd don't want him. There are so many other legends in the business that you could use them. Because it's not only annoying to see him on the screens, it's disheartening because you're like, this is a legend of the business who is quite frankly getting booed out the building, rightfully so in my opinion. But he's getting booed out the building when quite frankly there are so many other legends of the business you could put in there who would get cheered and are beloved by the fans, and that would therefore create a much more light-hearted and lovely moment.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, Hulk Hogan, everybody. Glad to see him back. So that was the end of that segment, and we're now in the home stretch of the show. Next up, main event. It was Seth Rollins versus CM Punk. And again, there is still a part of me, even though he's been back for over a year now, that still can't believe that we are seeing CM Punk wrestling in WWE at this point. And again, especially fighting Seth is one of those. For me, again, I came into wrestling, starting wrestling when Punk had just left. So this is like 6 months after that. So I didn't really know much of Punk at the time. Again, my friend Jordan, again, if he listens, he'll know exactly what I'm talking about. First ever pay-per-view I watched was Money in the Bank against Cena. From that moment, was a Punk fan and watched everything that he basically did from that point onwards. And then watching the show from like 2014, 2015, Seth was the other guy that I gravitated to. Even though he was a heel at the time, Seth was just, to me, was one of the best on the show, week in, week out. And to be honest, most of the time now, even with a broken back, it seems at this point, still is. So to see that match happen was truly, was to me, was amazing. Even if, to be fair, it could have been like a 1 out of 5 match, and I still would have probably loved it because that's just me, and I'm more about the characters that are involved and the story behind it. But there was just so much to this match. I don't know if you want to take us through your thoughts on it.
I just really enjoyed it for the fact that there was a lot of just trying to one up each other. Two people who clearly knows each other's games, knows each other's mind games. And I love the fact that they went straight into it. What annoys me so many times in wrestling is when they build up, we hate each other so much that we want nothing more than to beat each other up, and then they go into a lockup. Nothing annoys me more than if you build a matchup that way. These guys built this matchup like we're gonna beat the hell out of each other, and then that's exactly what they went and did. Immediately within the first couple of minutes of the match, being spilled outside the ring, doing dives over the top, throwing each other into the barricade, throwing each other into the post, just going mental. You have at one point you have Seth do the GTS, which is just amazing, and then the ending of this match is just brilliant. Something that I personally had never seen before until on Twitter I'd seen that they'd done it in AEW before, with that sort of similar ending. But just the fact that it again took 2 GTSs, which when it comes to someone like Cody, who I promise it's not the biggest dig, but it is a little bit, when he has to win most of his matches with 3 crossroads, in comparison to someone like CM Punk, who it's very rare I see him. I don't think I can remember a time, obviously, apart from that one that I saw on Twitter, but I don't remember him ever hitting 2 to win a match. It really felt impactful. It felt important. It felt like, okay, this is it. He knows I almost can't beat him with 1. I'm going to beat him with 2. And you have then that stare down between the 2 at the end, and I think it's not over between them 2. I think that a little part of me sort of believes they might have been saving a little bit. That I don't think they went all out. As in, we know what these 2 are like, and I think similar to where Punk and Drew sort of thing and stuff, and in any sort of scenario where they sort of know they're going to meet again, they don't want to use up all of their tricks, sort of thing, that they have in the book. And but it didn't feel that way in a bad way. There are bad examples of being like, okay, they're holding back, I guess. This one, like, you sort of look afterwards and go, I still feel like they could possibly do better.
Yeah.
And like in a positive way. It was such a good match, and yet there's that little part of you that's like, oh, they could even be more, and that excites you for the next time that they meet. Because it's not just a like, okay, that was a good match. That's a good match, and I hope they meet again.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. I mean, to be fair, like the things I've got written down was like the swinging neck breaker from the top rope.
Oh yeah.
When Punk was on the top rope right at the end and Rollins was about to run up, I was like, are they going to do a Pepsi plunge here? Like, is he going to pull that out of the bag? And I was just like, he had the ROH jacket on. And I was like, oh my God, like maybe that's what they're holding back for later. Like that sort of thing is those sort of like big moments that people obviously would love to see, but we haven't seen for a very long time. So stuff like that. Seth using the GTS, Punk using the stomp, the pedigrees, the announce table, all that stuff. And that is my big question mark is that it? Or are we getting started with something where maybe it's a bit more longer term and maybe it's not as simple as what it was with Drew where Punk's out injured. Drew's just antagonized him. Punk gets his revenge in bitty ways, and then eventually you have your matches towards the end. I think maybe it's one of those where maybe not the build to Mania, but like say Punk does win a title at Mania, Seth's the challenger.
Yeah.
Or you get to a SummerSlam, or you get to, maybe next Mania, and Seth gets the belt off Punk if Punk has a long reign or whatever. I think it's one of those that you can sort of circle back to at any given moment. It doesn't have to be this lengthy 6-month rivalry.
Yeah. That's how I see it as well. Like, whereas Drew and Punk very much felt like an in the moment thing. I think with Seth and Punk, it's that classic. One of my favorite sort of rivalry storylines is the ones that never sort of finish. They are two people who are destined to meet. They are two people at the top of the business that are just destined to meet over and over again. Whether that will be in the Rumble, or whether that be in a chamber or Money in the Bank, or or as you said, a title match where one of them becomes the challenger to the other, through winning a number one contenders match, or etc. etc. They are destined to meet. They are like I can't remember the wrestling soulmates. That's it. They're wrestling soulmates. They are due to just at every moment just come back together, and that's how I see their rivalry going. And it's not necessarily in the Drew Punk way of holding back, of like we're going to make this last match amazing by just leveling up each match as we go along. This one feels like they know they can do a lot more in the ring. But this one was the one where he hits the two GTSs. The next one might be where there's a Pepsi plunge, as you said, or a super stomp of some sort. Do you get what? Like, they know they clearly have chemistry in the ring. They clearly know they can do loads of stuff in the ring together. So they just know they can put on banger after banger, and they're just going to be wrestling soulmates. I feel like until Punk retires.
Yeah, basically. I 100% agree. Again, an interesting part to all this was there was a clip that got put out on WWE afterwards where Punk was getting interviewed as he was walking out the ring, and he basically called out Cody and Gunther and said, I think it was along lines of, I'm game 7, 46 is just a number, I'm clutch, Cody, I'm coming for you, Gunther, I'm coming for you, basically.
Yeah, he very much declared for the Rumble without declaring for the Rumble. Well, he mentions the Rumble in that exact promo that you want about the digital exclusive that they put out, and he mentions the Rumble. It's very clear that that's the direction, which I'm happy about, because I think there were rumors of Punk facing Gunther at Rumble, and I'm like, no, I would prefer them to just stack the Rumble. And give Gunther a lesser match without sounding too disrespectful on that Rumble card, if they want to have him wrestle on the Rumble card or on the Saturday night's main event, wherever they want to sort of put that match. But have Seth in the Rumble, have Punk in the Rumble again. you've then got more storylines going into that Rumble. And I think, they have potential to have one of the best Rumbles of all time with the amount of storylines sort of weaved in there. Yeah. And I think the fact that they've let Punk sort of declare for the Rumble and also not say which one he's going to go for if he wins it, sort of says, is a positive for me. He is, we'll probably speak about it closer to the time once I actually have storylines to work off of. He is my pick to win the Rumble. I think he is doing it. And I think this is a really good way of setting that up.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think we'll go and we'll have plenty of chats about theorizing about Rumble wins and Mania cards. I mean, again, and I think that's kind of one of my criticisms initially from turning off the TV after it finished of this show was there are so many questions and there isn't really a direction. But I've had time to sleep on it, and now I'm kind of like, maybe that's the beauty of it. It's kind of like you don't know where people are going next, and it's kind of like you've got to watch SmackDown on Friday, you've got to watch Raw next week. So again, they kind of played it perfectly, really. Yeah. But yeah, like any of that stuff you've just mentioned there, I think is, I'm absolutely 100% game for, whether it's Seth and Punk again or it's Punk against someone else or whatever. I mean, anything Punk, I'm always in for. He is my favorite wrestler, so I can't exactly say anything else other than that. So that was the show. An hour and 20 minutes later, we've kind of summarized and given our thoughts on it. I'm tossing up on a score here. Mm-hmm. So I've got a score out of 10. Now, initially, I wrote down 7. Mm-hmm. Talking about it and reflecting on it, I think I'm leaning more now to an 8.
Weirdly, I was having the exact same thought. Because I think coming out of it, I was a bit like, the thing that cost it massively was the overhyping in the reports that actually came out. I think that having the reports come out that The Undertaker was there, that Hogan was there, that all these legends were there, that, people from SmackDown, people from NXT were there, that Shawn Michaels was there, that The Rock was going to be there, and he hyped up his appearance. I think all of it sort of cost it a little bit in the sense of, like, this was a dramatized episode of Raw. This wasn't the Raw that we know. This has very much felt like a weird mini pay-per-view type thing, with some really good matches on it. And for me, I think that it probably was like a 7. But as you said, the way we've sort of spoken about it and reflected, I think I probably am leaning more towards an 8. I'm probably go for a 7.5 just to be annoying.
No, and to be fair, I think that 7-8 range is kind of where I've been sat at today when I've been trying to think of what is the actual score. I've said the reasons I've written sort of a little paragraph in terms of just jotted down thoughts as I've been going through the day. I said it was a good show, but there wasn't really it wasn't like a big surprise. Like there wasn't like a
big moment,
a return. Like say like Becky Lynch or a Charlotte Flair or something like that. There wasn't like someone turning on someone like out of nowhere. Like there wasn't like The Rock turning on Roman or Finn maybe, or Liv turning on Dom or something like that. There wasn't really, again, but I've mentioned it before, there wasn't story development, but I feel that was kind of by design so that when you go into the shows next week, that's when everything will start to kick off and we'll start that build. And obviously we've got lots of questions going into the Rumble, and that's kind of how it should be. I think the 2 points coming off were the Rock stuff really was weird. It just felt like it wasn't really necessary. If he is going to be there for Mania, I think it's a good way, like we said before, throwing off the scent, making people, it's not happening now, and then maybe there's a surprise down the line. I think the reaction I've seen online has been fairly positive, but there is still a lot of this isn't kind of what I was wanting it to be. But again, I think when you consider it's Netflix, it's a very corporate. it's probably going to be the most corporate WWE event we see for a very long time
Yeah.
because of the fact that the front row was basically the
Yeah.
Netflix CEOs and top brass, really. So I think with the matches, I enjoyed all the matches. There wasn't one where I thought this didn't really hit what I expected.
I think the only one for me is possibly the women's.
Yeah.
Just slightly.
Yeah.
Just I think for the end of a feud, I expected the match to be faster paced, maybe, than it initially was. But like again, that was another one that was advertised as the last woman standing match.
Yeah.
Just randomly changed
got
on
changed,
the night.
yeah.
I think if it was a last woman standing match, I actually think it would have stood out a lot more on the show.
Yeah.
Because you had, obviously, it was the only title match, obviously shoved in the middle of the show, but I think it would have made it stand out just that little bit more. Maybe if it was. But as you said, I just feel like it was missing one moment for me to go away and go, wow.
Yeah.
You know, to be the one thing I go and speak to people about today. You know, overall, if people go, what happened on Raw on Netflix, I'd be like, oh, it's a really solid show. You know, it was really, where I think they were missing that one thing, and it was just needed one, whether it was, as you said, the Rock stuff, Becky, Charlotte, you know, just something. Like, there's just one, it feels like they were missing one big moment that would have then made it really spoken about a lot more. Like,
yeah, I think it's like when you ever look at like recaps or stuff on Raw, it's like whenever they go to particular episodes, there's a big moment that's like someone's turned on someone, or someone's won this, or someone's done that. It's like the specific moments, and I just feel like there wasn't that sort of one standout moment that stuck out above everybody else, or everything else, I should say. That's not to say it wasn't a good show, because I personally enjoyed it for what it was. Obviously, it could be better. It could have been a hell of a lot worse, because again, over the past 10 years, we have seen a lot worse out of WWE. So I ain't complaining with what we got last night, one iota. So, with that being said, again, that's kind of covered everything that I wanted to cover, really. I'm just making sure in my notes there wasn't anything I wanted to say apart from that. I know you mentioned before that your pick for match of the show was Jey and Drew. Is that right?
Yeah. Jey and Drew was my match tonight. I just felt like it was. I think if I was going to show maybe a casual fan, if you know, I would to just one match from that show, that probably would have been it. Or I probably would have shown the opener. I think the main event was definitely for wrestling fans.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what we would all enjoy it. But as a casual fan, I think those are the two. I just love the storytelling in that match.
Absolutely. So I think with that cheerful note we've ended on, I think that's where we'll leave it for the very first episode of the Taking the Pin podcast. Again, if you have enjoyed it, please consider subscribing, whatever podcasts place you're listening on, whether it's Spotify, Apple, Amazon, wherever. If you are on YouTube, again, consider hitting that subscribe button. Again, we are on Twitter as well, so we do have an account there if you want to go follow that. Leave a 5-star review, because with podcasts, that is a very, very helpful thing that people can do that people don't realize they can do. So if you did enjoy it, even if it was a 4.5 star, just put it down as a cheeky 5. That'll help us out. And we'll be back in the near future with more episodes. And again, after doing this, there's about 10 episode ideas in my mind, which we can get right to. So that's good to hear. So on that note, I shall bid you farewell. Anything else you want to add, Bragster?
No, I think you covered it all perfectly. I mean, yeah, just thank you guys for sticking with us for this first episode. It's an exciting time in wrestling right now.
Yeah.
So hopefully you guys will be here for the journey ahead. You know, as we head into the road to WrestleMania, and that's not including the fact that we've got NXT and stuff like AEW as well, also around, that are just like, you know, doing really well. So, and have some great wrestling stuff on those as well. So there is plenty to talk about, and we just hope you stick along for the ride.
Absolutely. And with that, we'll bid you farewell, and we'll see you on the next one, guys. See you soon.
See you later.